We throw around the word science all the time, right? With a capital S. We think of it as this pillar of truth in our society. But what if that single word is actually hiding a story that's way more complex, a little bit messy, and honestly, a lot more interesting? What if the very system we've built around it is causing some really big problems?
And that right there is the big question. As the writer Oliver López-Corona points out, that science we call science is not the same thing for everyone. See, we're all using the same word, but we might be talking about completely different things without even knowing it. And that confusion, it's at the root of so many arguments.
So let's try to untangle this. Think of it in three ways. First, you've got science as a verb, the method itself. It's all about asking tough questions, demanding evidence, and testing your ideas against the real world. Then, there's science as a noun, the giant library of knowledge we've built using that method. But that third one, science as a profession, well, that's where things start to get a little tricky.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with that whole one word, many meanings idea. Then we'll dive into a huge problem within the profession, something called the tragedy of the peers. After that, we'll look at a couple of really powerful ideas for how to fix it, reclaiming the commons and thinking of science as a Levy flight. And finally, we'll zoom all the way out to see the bigger picture.
Right, so we've got the method, the knowledge, and the profession. Now, we're going to really zero in on that third box, the profession, because honestly, that's where some of the fiercest debates and the biggest challenges are happening right now.
Okay, so this brings us to the core of the problem. We have this system called peer review, and it was set up to be a filter for quality, right? But what happens when that filter starts creating its own weird, unintended consequences? This is what some people have started calling the tragedy of the peers.
To really get this, we need to take a quick step back to an old idea from economics, the tragedy of the commons. Just picture a shared field of grass. Every farmer has a personal incentive to add one more cow to their herd, right? But if every farmer does that, the field gets destroyed, and it's game over for everyone. Your personal self-interest ends up hurting the whole group.
Now, let's apply that exact same logic to the profession of science. In the tragedy of the peers, the shared resource isn't a field of grass, it's scientific credibility. The whole game can shift from trying to expand our collective knowledge to just trying to win validation from other scientists to get ahead, to get that grant, that promotion, that prestige.
The thinker Nassim Nicholas Taleb puts it, well, he doesn't mince words. He says the institution, the academy, can sometimes look like the pure search for truth, but the incentives underneath can be something else entirely. It's a pretty sharp critique. And look, this is not just some abstract philosophical argument. This stuff has devastating real-world impacts. Let's talk about one of the most infamous cases ever, the Andrew Wakefield paper from 1998.
So here's how this nightmare unfolded. A completely fraudulent paper gets published in one of the most respected medical journals on the planet. And the journal's prestige, that stamp of peer-reviewed approval, acted like a massive megaphone. It gave these terrible lies an air of authority. The media ran with it, and it spread like wildfire. And even though the paper was eventually retracted, it was too late. The damage was done. A global movement was born from a single catastrophic failure of the system.
This is a perfect, if tragic, example of something called defense paradox. Think about it. If you see an open cliff edge, you're going to be careful. But if someone builds a fence, you trust it. You lean on it. The fence is supposed to make you safe, but if that fence breaks, the disaster is so much worse because you were encouraged to blindly trust it. The peer-reviewed label can act just like that faulty fence, making us drop our guard.
Okay, so that's the problem. And yeah, it's a big one. So what in the world do we do about it? Well, the first idea is a radical one. Let's change the entire publishing system, moving it away from being a for-profit market and back to being a community-owned resource.
You see, as scholar Samuel Moore points out, the system we have now is basically market-led. It's a business. Publishing is a transaction. But a commons-based approach flips that on its head. It puts the scientists themselves back in charge. It's about collaboration, not cutthroat competition, and it's being pioneered by things like Diamond Open Access journals, which don't charge anyone, not the readers, not the authors.
And this community-focused idea builds into something even bigger called LibreScience, which is actually modeled on the free software movement. It's built on 4 fundamental freedoms that go way beyond just being able to read a paper. It's the freedom to use the results, to understand them, to share them, and most importantly, to build upon them. It's about total transparency and real community ownership of knowledge. Now, the second solution is a little different. It's less about systems and more about a whole new philosophy of discovery. And it's inspired by this incredible pattern that you see all over the natural world, the levee flight.
So, what on earth is a levee flight? Okay, just picture an animal foraging for food. It'll spend a ton of time taking lots of small, careful steps, searching one small patch of ground really, really well. But then, all of a sudden, it'll take a massive, random leap into a totally new, unexplored part of the forest. And that weird mix of careful, local searching and big, bold jumps? It turns out that's one of the most efficient ways to find things.
And I bet you can see where this is going, right? We can apply that exact pattern to science. Most of what we call standard science is those small steps, refining what we know, making our measurements just a little bit better. But every now and then we desperately need revolutionary science, those giant leaps, the truly out-of-the-box ideas like Einstein's relativity, that just blow open whole new worlds of knowledge. A healthy system needs both.
So how do you actually encourage that? Well, one cool idea is a barbell funding strategy. Instead of dumping all our money into safe, middle-of-the-road projects, you intentionally set aside a chunk, say 20%, for super safe, incremental work, and another 20% for crazy, high-risk, high-reward, big-jump ideas. You could even fund those by lottery to get rid of bias. It's a way to structurally force ourselves to take those big, important leaps.
All right, to wrap all this up, we need to pull the camera back way, way back. Because all these debates we're having today about publishing and funding models, they're really just one small chapter in a much, much, much longer story. You see, science isn't some institution that just popped into existence a few hundred years ago. It is a deeply human endeavor that stretches back for millennia. We're talking about our Cro-Magnon ancestors carving the phases of the moon into bone 30,000 years ago, the Nebra sky disk, Newton, and now the James Webb telescope. It is one long, unbroken chain of human curiosity. So if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. Science is not some perfect, finished thing handed down from on high. It's a messy, ongoing, profoundly human story. It has flaws, it has fierce internal debates, and it is constantly evolving and trying to get better. The problems we talked about today aren't a sign that science is broken, they're a sign that it's alive.
This entire endeavor is a story that's being told across thousands of generations. Ideas like commons-based publishing and levee flight funding, those are our generation's attempt to write a better, smarter chapter. And that leaves us with one final thought. What part are we going to play in writing the next one?